think y'all should see it now, but let me know if you don't.
Beautiful. Yep, we do. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being with us. I know sometimes the summer months are challenging with scheduling and availability, so appreciate you all prioritizing the time to come and join our EPSG meeting today. If we transition to the next slide. Just a few housekeeping reminders. Holly, you were already a good reminder for the group. If you wouldn't mind renaming yourself with your name and your organization. And then just a few other reminders. Our meeting is being recorded, and per usual, we will take the recording and post it to our website afterward. Please be mindful of keeping yourself on mute unless you're speaking. And we do encourage folks to leave their cameras on just so we can have that collegial conversation. And then if you can also make sure to, throughout today's discussions, we're going to have a few opportunities to pause and discuss, and so ask folks to continue to actively participate, but to also monitor airtime. If we go to the next slide, you can see we've got a number of topics that we want to discuss collaboratively today, including a review of action that was taken during our April SBEC meeting, and then a number of discussions across various chapters under SBEC's authority. And then we'll close with discussion around the plan or the plans under consideration for the July meeting, and then we'll have time for member questions as well. I did want to pause here before we move into today's agenda and actually turn it over to Kelby to share some updates.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Kelby Oser. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Educator and Systems Support. And I'm here because, as you know, Emily Garcia made the difficult decision to transition off the TEA team and is moving into a new role in the private sector. Her last day was actually yesterday. As soon as we learned about Emily's decision, we did start the process to hire for the Associate Commissioner of Educator Preparation, Certification, and Enforcement role. We ran a competitive process, and I am excited to announce that we have chosen a new Associate Commissioner to lead this incredible team, and that is Jessica McLaughlin, who I know all of you know very well. So we're very excited to have Jessica leading in this role. Obviously, you know, she has many years of experience, 8, I believe, here at the agency, having led in several different initiatives, all related to instructional leadership and educator quality. She has taken on, you know, more and more significant leadership and responsibilities while she's been here at the agency, and has really deep relationships across the agency within our educator preparation, certification, and enforcement team, as well as with our board members and with everybody here on this call and our external stakeholders and relationships. So just very excited to welcome Jessica in this role, and she will be officially transitioning into the role starting next week, but obviously she's, you know, already here facilitating and taking on some of these responsibilities. And so hopefully y'all will all help welcome her into the role. And as we, you know, navigate this transition, I'm happy to also play, you know, an additional support role during the transition, but definitely reach out to me, reach out to Jessica if you have any questions. And I will pass it back to Jessica.
Oh, Kelby, before you go, so what does that mean for Jessica's position?
So that is definitely on our list to determine. So I think we'll work with Jessica as soon as she's transitioned to determine, you know, what that means for posting or, you know, hiring for her current position.
And remind me what that position is.
It is Senior Director of Educator Quality. Jessica, you can help me.
Yes.
Sometimes I have trouble with all of our titles as well.
All of our names. Thank you, Kelby.
And I'll stick around for this meeting. So if y'all have other questions, I will be around for this meeting, but we'll transition it back to the team to facilitate.
Thank you, Kelby, and just really appreciate this honor to step into this role to really help support this fantastic team and continue to get to work with each of you and continue our collaboration. So no, I'll be reaching out to set up some conversations over the course of the coming weeks, but excited to get to continue to collaborate. I think with that, transition it over for an update around the April meeting.
Thank you, Jessica. I'll take this one on. Y'all, it's hard to follow meeting royalty. You already know I'm in trouble if the deputy commissioner starts, and then we had great news to share with you all, but I'm going to do a really quick recap of the EPSG April 2024 meeting. We had a lot of items, but we were able to move many of those through pretty swiftly thanks to the consent agenda in April. You'll hear more about some of these items, but a couple of highlights. We had several four-year rule reviews for chapters 231, 234, and 245 that we were able to get the process started on. We were excited to get chapter 227 into the final stretch at EPSG by getting that adopted. And that will be the agenda item that will be before SBOE for their final review next week. We were also excited to have 6 additional EdPrep programs that reached the end of their milestone with their continuing approval reviews. Sarah Wolf, who is on this call, always does a phenomenal job with her team on the conversations around our cases. And then in the latter part of the meeting, we had several meaty discussion items. One about chapter 249, which you'll have the pleasure of hearing a little more from Sarah about later in the call today. Chapter 229, Dr. Olafson, who I know is also on this call, who always does an amazing job of making such a robust and important chapter digestible for the everyday person like myself. And then we had highlights on our next steps in developing the Texas-specific performance assessment, and rounded out by Trenton Law, wonderful Trenton Law on my team, who discussed, again, the proposed revisions for Chapter 230, specific to English language proficiency. So it was another action-packed meeting. We're looking forward to the upcoming meeting in July. And with that, I will hand it off to, I believe, wonderful Lori Ayers to get the process started and the conversation started on our first topic for today.
Thank you, Marilyn. Good morning, everyone. And we are very excited about Jessica's new role on our EPSG team. I've known Jessica for a while and actually worked directly for her for a while. So I appreciate her expertise and her abilities. I think she's going to be awesome as an AC. So I want to talk a little bit about where we are on Chapter 228 adoption. So Cameron, if you could advance the slide, please. Thank you. So we have been, as you know, starting to provide supports around the implementation of Chapter 228. We started with some informational webinars earlier on, I think right before we went to SBOE. And we provided a webinar for educator preparation programs, and then another one that was geared towards your LEA partners, so that all folks could understand what some of the changes were going to look like in 228. And so we were able to record those and post those on the program provider resources page. And so I think it would be important for our EPP partners to go in and hear what kind of information we provided to the LEAs about their role and how this would impact them. And then we also highlighted some of the updates for 228 and 230 in a March superintendent call. And then we were able to put together some FAQs about the 228 webinars, and those are now also posted on the PPR page, and I'll drop that link into the chat as soon as I'm finished going through these slides. And then also we have had a residency route webinar for EPPs interested in applying to offer that route. And then the residency route application is ready to go for programs who want to apply. So that's where we've been. We are continuing to get questions from programs, maybe some questions as they've been thinking about the FAQs and the webinars that we've posted, and they've had a chance to look over the adopted 228. And we're continuing to answer and respond to some of those questions. So we encourage programs to continue to ask those questions. We've also responded to some from some districts as well. We are working now on identifying and putting together some additional trainings that are going to dig a little bit deeper into the updates in Chapter 228 so that we can bring to the forefront some of the trainings and programs don't have to rely on their ability to just dissect the information themselves. So more to come on that. And we're going to have those links published in the newsletter. So continue to look for those training links there and register for those webinars. And we will also record those and post them on the PPR page as we always do with our trainings. So Cameron, next slide, please. Yep, and so this just shows you, this is a screenshot of the program provider resources page. In case you're not familiar with it, if you scroll down to the bottom of that page, the training events and materials section is where we post all of our trainings. And you can see right here that they're listed at the very top of the list of trainings along with the FAQ. Okay, so just wanted to share a couple of highlights for some of the FAQs. We received a lot of questions about Chapter 228 implementation, and as we sorted through them, I think two questions really surfaced as being the most asked. So I thought I would share those here just to give you an idea. One of them was around implementation of Chapter 228 requirements. And so everyone knows that the implementation date is 9/1/2024. That's when it will become effective. But programs wanted to really know what did that mean for candidates that were already in process of completing requirements and how did that apply to them? And so the FAQ guidance on that one is that for candidates admitted prior to 9/1/2024, they would meet the requirements in the legacy 228. And for candidates admitted after 9/1/2024, they would meet the requirements in the new Chapter 228. So that is one of the two big questions we received. And you can see there were several nuances about that. One was in regards to FBE requirements. One was in regards to how clinical teaching, internship, or practicum would be handled, et cetera. So the next slide is one of the other big top questions that was asked, and that was about the interpretation of the early field-based experience requirements for teacher candidates. And so basically what we've done is we've bucketed that into two buckets. Candidates now are required to complete 50 hours of early field-based experience in their pre-service teacher requirements. 25 of those hours that are represented in .43C are the hours where candidates need to be actively engaged in your K-12 classrooms. The remaining 25 hours, which are represented in .43D, can be accrued in a variety of different ways, and these can be mixed and matched as you feel appropriate, as you've woven these into your coursework as an EPP for your candidates to complete this requirement. So the video technology-based requirement has been retained. And then the flexibilities that were added with the new adoption are service as a teacher of record, service as an educational aide, and service as a substitute teacher. And so those hours can be accrued as part of the 25 hours that don't require active classroom engagement. So we did share this as well in the FAQs and provided this advisement. So I will volley this to Jody for a moment to give her expert information about residency.
Lori, can I jump in for just a second? I have a question.
Oh, sure.
I can't figure out where the hand raise is on this new Zoom thing.
Then just yell.
I've heard I apologize, I wasn't at the joint summer meetings. I have a question about clinical teachers that are already admitted. My understanding is that the guidance is that you would prefer for us to go to hours, even if they're admitted prior to 9/1/24. Is that correct?
If they're admitted prior to 9/1/24, they will fall under the legacy 228, if that's what you want them to do. It's not applicable to them if they were admitted before 9/1.
But can we do hours instead of days for clinical teaching for them is my specific question.
Sarah, you're on, right? Can you respond to, I know we had a conversation about that.
Right. Yes. I need to refresh my memory on that and take a look at the language, because I think that when we were discussing it, we were just looking at the dates of implementation. So let me.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I think that, that's, if it's possible, I think for compliance purposes, for probably 2 or 3 semesters, we're gonna have candidates that fall into both, and if we could be honoring the hours, I mean, and maybe it's, there's some kind of letter or something that we do. I just, even at a small program, I think it would be difficult to track who needs to be doing what kind of clinical experience.
Right. Thank you for that. We'll look into that and get back with you on that one. Did anyone else have any questions before we move on? Thanks, Liz. Jody?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm not sure if y'all know, but the residency applications are going to be live. So let me talk about how to get an application for those who are interested in offering the Texas teacher residency preparation route at their APP. What you'll want to do is go onto the program provider page, and there is a link to click intent to apply. All this is for us just to kind of gather your information and then send you the application. We'll be sending you your own personal share file folder that will have all of the you can upload all your secure documents to that, and the application as well as directions that'll come directly to you. And ideally, if you can get that to us by the 30th of June, sorry. If not, just give us a holler over at the TEA inbox down there, TEA Teacher Residency inbox, if you need more time or you have some questions about the application process. But again, you start with intent to apply survey, click that, write it up, and then we will ship that directly to you. Cameron? So you're probably curious about when all this happens, right? So our first scoring window will be July 12th. That's coming up. A little less than a month. That's when that window closes. And then ideally you will get, again, this is all estimation, get a response by 9:30 as to your application status to go into a recommendation for approval in December. So just the December SBAC meeting. So just note those windows are truly for us to kind of gauge how many we can have, how many portfolios we can have within a given time. So we have a July 29th, then we have an August. Notice that those 3 windows take folks into submission in December. After that, it moves into the February and the March or April windows of the following year. Again, those are estimations, there could be like issues if someone accidentally uploaded the wrong file. The scorer will reach out to folks if that's the case, if that happens to you, but it won't. And with that, unless there's questions, I'm going to hand this off to Marilyn.
Thanks a lot, Jody. So this is my segment 1 of spoiler alerts of special requests from Maryland in today's meeting. So if you all have followed along as we got Chapter 228 through the rulemaking process, we had some requests, some feedback, things that came up about the 228 rules, either at adoption at the SBAC meeting or following final review at SBOE in April. So I wanted to let you know the teams worked together to put together a brief, I will call it a mini Chapter 228 survey for lack of a more special title, that I will be sending to all of you fine EPSG members later today to get an opportunity to get some of your feedback on a couple of areas where I know Chair Streepy and others have asked staff to go back and get some additional feedback on ways that we can either provide some additional guidance or make the appropriate revisions to SBEC rules to further support the implementation. So purpose of the slide is just to give you a heads up. I am going to be asking for your support in completing a survey. By July the 2nd, some of you are so wonderful. We barely press send on a survey and you've completed it and sent it back. So you don't have to wait until then. I don't want to be the reason you don't have a happy July 4th though. So if you're planning on traveling and doing that, if you're able to complete that and send your feedback, be fantastic. My plan on this item, we'll have a 228 broad discussion item on the July agenda, is to be able to share the survey responses with the board as we have this conversation about best next steps to engage in the next round of rulemaking. So that's it for the slide for now. More to come for sure. I saw fabulous Holly Eaton come off of mute, so I think she's going to ask me a question. So before I kick it off to Mark, Holly, absolutely, what's your question?
Yes, ma'am. So when we say reconsider, I'm trying to remember what kinds of things were raised at adoption and the SBOE meeting.
Yeah,
on the
was,
reconsideration of the total number of hours, what was the ask there?
So it's about the 490 hours and the weeks versus, and we think also the number of hours in a day to focus on the area. So in that section of rule text, we just kind of want to put that back out to folks to sort of get some more thoughts about completing those particular hours and where there may have been challenges or, you know, a need for further clarification to support folks in getting those hours completed.
So a concern was expressed that that might be unattainable in some instances. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yep. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
May I jump in with a question as well?
Sure.
So the possible inclusion of limited extracurricular activities.
Right.
I know that my guess is that's probably a concern of folks in music and ag and maybe groups that have extensive types of extracurricular.
You're exactly right. Yes,
okay.
ma'am. That's where that one came up from. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate the questions for clarification, and I will say thank you again in advance. You all are always so supportive in providing feedback and taking a little bit of your time to further help us in these kinds of important conversations. With that said, that's all of my spoiler alert, and I will pass it on to, I believe, the amazing Dr. Mark Olofsson.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. I wanted to provide a brief update about what the board will be taking a look at for Chapter 229. On the next slide, we previewed what we were going to bring to the board at the last EPSG meeting, and the SBEC had a great discussion in April, really worked through some pieces and provided clear guidance to us. Based on that discussion, the proposal item in July will have no major changes from what we had presented in April. I will note the board discussed additional topics, but clearly directed staff to not make additional changes. So the four groups of four categories that we've got here are related to the student growth indicator, related to new Chapter 228, ASAP index calculations, and then our kind of standard rule and manual language enhancements. So a summary of those first two is on the next slide. Related to our student growth indicator, that is part of the accountability system for educator preparation programs. The board, we'll be presenting an update that would allow for 23-24 to be another report only year for this data, as well as updating the teacher sample and process language to really provide clear specifics and transparency on what exactly it is that we go about how exactly we identify teachers for inclusion in the sample based on the data sources that we have. Over on the Chapter 228 related updates, there's a whole bunch of new cross-references and new and renumbered sections, of course, in 228. And so we need to make the updates in 229, update our definitions to match. Also, we'll be providing a clear timeline and clarity for the new observation provisions. And then we'll be pausing on commendations in order to create a system that's aligned with the new continuing approval review system. Those are the Chapter 228 related updates. The ACEP index calculations, this came out, we had a great conversation with stakeholders, with the board, and the proposed changes that we'll be moving forward with is shifting the timeline for additional consequences for missing the same indicator and demographic group multiple times in a row. Previously, there was additional consequences if you did that in a second year. We'll actually be moving that to the third year and following. And then finally, looking at rule and manual language updates. Putting in subchapter headings within the rule itself, updating definitions, providing clearer process descriptions and data sources in our manual, and also clarifying some title language throughout the manual. So those are my updates, and we'll be providing those as a proposal item to the board here in July.
Okay, everyone, I think I'm up next. Good morning. Want to start with an update related to our Chapter 231 discussion around special education personnel assignments. So at the December 2023 SBEC meeting, staff facilitated a discussion item that laid out the need to shift current SBEC rules to more clearly align with ESSA. Of course, some of you know that this conversation extends past the December 2023 meeting, of course. But again, the goal there was to clearly align, having the goal of clearly aligning with ESSA and support certification requirements to ensure students have access to grade level curriculum and high expectations. This discussion was continued at the February meeting, with staff receiving the charge to explore creating a revised worksheet aligned with ESSA and representative of the Texas educational context. In the next slide. So since the fall and throughout spring 2024, we've continuously worked with stakeholders to determine the best course of action in updating the rules related to SPED personal assignments. And throughout each meeting, our priorities have been to, one, as I shared earlier, to develop a streamlined Texas version of a content competency worksheet that emphasizes the demonstration of content proficiency with flexible options for demonstration for teachers. Consider how requirements might be differentiated for teachers at different stages of their careers, and also to maintain the flexibility so as not to further constrict the pipeline, the special education pipeline. That's something that we've heard consistently as something we should keep at the top of our radar with our stakeholders. At this time, I do want to give a special shout out to our small but mighty EPSG Special Populations Working Group, Trisha, Holly, Jamil, and Christina. We definitely appreciate the input and the willingness you've had to review draft after draft after draft of this worksheet. And I think at the upcoming July SBEC meeting, we do plan to seek SBEC input on a draft of that worksheet, in addition to input around the questions that we've been wrestling with in our stakeholder sessions around teacher of record versus non-teacher of record, requirements for elementary teachers versus requirements for secondary teachers, and which classroom experiences are appropriate indicators of a special educator's content knowledge. Again, those are questions that we've been asking throughout our time with stakeholders, and we want to get SBEC feedback around that. And then just a reminder here, we do plan to provide that draft worksheet at the upcoming July meeting. I'll pause there.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Marco, so is there a plan to meet with the stakeholders one more time before the SBEC meeting?
Yes, Holly, that is correct. So actually after this meeting, Kelly is planning to send out communication and organize that.
Okay, great. And will we have an opportunity to look at the draft worksheet, or how is that gonna, just wondering about the timing.
Yes, that's correct. So you will have an opportunity to review the draft worksheet that we plan on putting in front of the SBEC beforehand. I will share though that it hasn't shifted since our last conversation. So really the purpose of our next meeting with the group will just be to outline, here's what we're thinking, here's where we're looking for SBEC feedback.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it'll be like the version 3 or whatever that.
That's correct. Yes. Yes. Yes, it'll be like that version 3, but I do think your feedback around, considering a secondary context versus just a middle school and a high school is something that we've been thinking about as well. And I think that'll be reflected in the updates that we've made.
And Holly,
Great.
just
Okay,
to
thank you.
name as well, I think that the goal will be to put a draft in front of the SBEC, but to name kind of where there are still opportunities for discussion, refinement, and sort of narrate over, this is what we've heard from stakeholders, here's the big questions they're grappling with, just to ensure we've got the SBEC's voice and perspective in the conversation. So not saying this is the final version, we're recommending the SBEC move forward with it, but to really kind of use the worksheet as an opportunity for discussion around some of these key decision points.
Okay, great.
Okay, I also have the next update related to Chapter 235, Teacher Pedagogy Standards. At the April SBEC meeting, the SBEC discussed a draft of the revised Chapter 235 Teacher Pedagogy Standards. The draft presented before the SBEC reorganizes the standards into a group of 5 standards, with data-driven practices shifting to instructional delivery and assessment, and knowledge of students and student learning folding into each of the groups that you see in orange. The draft standards also include ELAR and math content-specific standards and incorporate knowledge and skills aligned to the effective implementation of high-quality instructional materials. Ultimately, these draft standards provide an opportunity, to align with teacher standards in Chapter 149 and would outline a continuum of expectations from pre-service to in-service and emphasize an importance in establishing common language, common expectations, and common practices for all teachers as well. Okay, in the next slide, the SBEC approved Educator Standards Advisory Committee has worked tirelessly since November 2023. As you can see here, they meet frequently to revise and edit the standards in alignment with legislation and state initiative and priorities, and also incorporate evidence and research-based instructional practices into the standards that would benefit all students. Recently, we facilitated a June session to provide the committee members an opportunity to reflect on and incorporate feedback shared by the SBEC at the April SBEC meeting. And given this conversation and given the feedback that we received in April, we do plan to bring the standards back for discussion at the upcoming July meeting, again, to allow the SBEC another opportunity to review and provide feedback on those draft standards. Okay, that's it for me.
Okay, hi everyone. And I think Mr. Rodriguez is also going to hop on and join us for this portion. So this is the discussion of 249. We brought this as a discussion item in April. We will be bringing it back to the July meeting as a discussion item with hopes of, and we'll get there in just a second, of having another stakeholder engagement meeting, which is scheduled for July 9th in the upcoming weeks. So this is the same information that we provided at the board meeting because we haven't engaged in stakeholder feedback at this point. So we still have the same recommendation from staff's point of view, basically cleaning up our contract abandonment, procedural updates so that our rule matches staff's procedure, making some definition updates to our testing cases, changing our exceptions rule just because it doesn't comply with the government code, and then looking at ways we have been kind of running into problems with what we consider inappropriate communications, where the ALJs, if there's not something overtly sexual, are not finding it to be inappropriate communication. So we'd like to engage in a discussion of what is the professional line and what crosses the professional line in terms of protecting children. So once again, like I said, these haven't changed. But oh, thank you, Cameron. A stakeholder engagement meeting will be held on July 9th at 1 p.m. So please feel free to email me. The people that have emailed me, I've included them on the invite. We just sent it out this week. So please feel free to email me and spread the word because we really do want as much engagement as possible. And the plan is to bring this back at this board meeting for a discussion item and then hold another stakeholder engagement meeting prior to the September meeting where we will hope to bring draft text for the board's consideration. So
I have a question, Sarah. I know that Julie Leahy on our staff, I think she contacted you about serving on the stakeholder committee. She served on the prior one. She's out of town till like the 25th. What are you, is this going to be a virtual meeting or?
It is going to be virtual, and I sent her the invite, so she may not have received it yet, but I sent it. I think we sent this out. We were waiting to hear back from our board members that are serving on this. So the invite probably went out, I think, Tuesday of this week, and I sent it to her. But yes, feel free to include as many people as possible. It is going to be virtual. I'm hoping that for the meeting before the September meeting, I would love to have kind of an in-person meeting, and maybe we'll be able to offer a virtual one option as well. But I do feel like sometimes in person, we can have a lot more back and forth dialogue. So that's my hope for that next stakeholder engagement.
Well, I just don't want you to think that she's not interested because she's not here to respond. So
oh yeah,
I didn't know when your deadline was to respond. I guess I was kind
of. Oh no, we will. I can,
okay.
If anybody wants to join, I will send the invite up till the time that the meeting starts. So the more the merrier.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
That is it.
All right. Good morning, everyone. At the upcoming July SBAC meeting, I intend to propose to the board an expansion of the options for individuals to meet the English language proficiency requirement as outlined in Rule Chapter 230, Subchapter B related to general certification requirements. Currently, those applicants seeking certification in Texas are required to meet English language proficiency prior to being issued a certificate. And ELP, as we refer to it, has been a hot topic for our educators as well, who need to meet the requirement, as well as districts needing to fill the positions. There are currently 3 options to meet the requirement. They are completion of an undergraduate or graduate degree at an accredited institution of higher education in the U.S., or verification of minimum scale scores on the Test of English as a Foreign Language Internet-Based Test, or TOEFL IBT, or if they have an undergraduate or graduate degree that they earned at an institution of higher education in a country outside of the U.S. listed in the figure in Chapter 230B. This list includes countries exempted from the TOEFL IBT test requirement, since they are ones where English is one of the official languages. Recommendations to the board will include allowing a score within the range of the high intermediate level on the TOEFL IBT in the place of the current minimum scale score requirement. This recommendation will continue in the spirit of meeting the high expectation previously established with the minimum scale score. Also, we're recommending adding draft language or one of its territories in section 230.11 to include all of the U.S. territories in the exemption along with the U.S. states. We're also going to propose adding countries to the current figure in Rule Chapter for exemption from the ELP requirement based on our credentials review data that we collected from our applications from individuals that we received, and where English is one of the official languages of the country. And finally, we'll recommend allowing an individual who holds a standard certificate issued by the State Department of Education in another state where exams were taken and passed to be added as an option to allow those individuals to meet the ELP requirement. And that is all I have for that update.
And y'all, I'm gonna just tell you now, I'm gonna get in trouble. Mr. Law is about 6 steps from my office, so he's gonna get on me about messing with him in the chat about holding his slides like a movie preview until the July meeting, but that will be a great discussion. I think Cameron, slide whisperer extraordinaire, on the next slides coming up, we wanted to give you just a little bit of a preview about what we are excited to be offering at the upcoming SBAC July 18th work session. So on the next slide, while I have not done the topics fair justice, the little blue and white pitiful screen here, we are going to be delighted to spend the first half of the meeting day with the board on what we're calling a long range plan. And this is going to give us an opportunity to kind of, with the board, celebrate a lot of great work that has been done to date. and also continue reflecting on the various work streams that support the work of the SBEC and talk about the board's vision, continued vision for educator preparation and certification moving forward. So that'll be the first part of the day planned. I have the pleasure in the second half of the day of bringing forward some time with the board to kind of discuss the wonders of you fine folks that I get to stare at on the screen. Our EPSG stakeholder group, who has been critical and continues to be a critical component of our success in the work that we do for and on behalf of the SBEC. So this is going to be an opportunity for us to talk about the composition of the stakeholder groups, how we can further maximize all of you fine folks and your talents, and how we possibly want to look at stakeholder engagement in the future. One example that you'll hear about is sort of considering expansion of the working groups. Can we consolidate talents and also further expand talents where needed to sort of make sure we're getting the types of feedback that the board always values and that we value in furthering their work. This is also my moment a little bit to give you a spoiler alert too. At the very end of this conversation, this is going to be the second survey that I'm sending to all of our EPSG members. It is my heartfelt plea in all sincerity, if you will identify yourselves on the survey, and you'll see why I'm asking for that when you see the actual questions. This is an opportunity for us to really hear from you all directly, what you feel is working about this process, where we can improve as we move forward, and we genuinely want to get that feedback. The plan is to share your comments directly with the board as we're talking through the work session. So that's my spoiler alert hit number 2. You'll get that survey from me again later today. Oh, Dr. Ward, I'm so sorry. I was going on like a Baptist preacher. Let me be quiet. You raised your hand a long time ago. What is your question, ma'am?
No, actually, I just raised it because I thought you were at the end of the slide. So my question is, I know the reconstitution of EPSG predates COVID, and there's a number of organizations that have changes in leadership, mainly the CSOT organizations. And I know there's growing concern that these organizations aren't represented because there's not a clear process for naming new people. Is that going to be part of this plan? And a second question that you can answer. So for example, TDFE has not had representation for quite a while. Would it be appropriate if she's available to invite the current TDFE president to attend the work session in the afternoon?
You know, the work session's going to be open. That meeting will be a posted meeting and open. I think we're still working on the components of how to make this interactive, Dr. Ward. So in terms of, I don't know yet how much the survey is going to be step 1. To your point, certainly staff has been flagging the fact that we want to make sure all voices are represented. So we are aware of, you know, in some cases, organizations who haven't had an active voice on EPSG, and how moving forward, we want to rectify that and have a process. I will tell you in all honesty, I'm still baking the pie about how to make this a really good work session and interactive. So I appreciate you asking that question. And so what I would say, I'll say it this way. If there is an opportunity, as the rest of the team checks me to make sure I'm not doing something crazy, that we can fold some folks into those things, I will follow up with you and also make sure that as we're getting the stakeholder feedback, that we make sure we get full representation of folks and voices. If you'll trust me on that piece and allow me a little bit of follow-up with the internal team, I think that's probably the best way to kind of look at this. But I very much appreciate the questions and making sure we don't lose sight of the fact that as we move forward, we want to have some additional plans in place so we don't miss out on all voices being represented and heard.
And I know the TDFE current president would be interested in it. And I don't know if it's appropriate since she hasn't been attending these meetings, but for her to fill out the survey as well, representing the organization. And I can give you her contact information if you don't have it.
Yeah, if you will send that to me so I have it, Dr. Ward, I'd be excited to receive that from you. And I appreciate that very much. I think I can go to the next slide now, where we're going to talk about on the very next day, July 19th, the SBEC meeting, slide whisperer extraordinaire. You will get me through this quickly so we can see if our colleagues have questions. We'll have a couple of things on the consent agenda. Again, we will be closing out adopting the 4-year rule review for those 3 rule chapters, 231, 234, and 245. We've got some action items for the board, approving at least 1 new EPP. We may have a second if work continues to go well with that item. A little time on the board's operating policies and procedures and a memorandum of agreement. And then we've got a couple of proposal items. We're excited to get to this part in the process. Dr. Olson tickled your ears earlier in the conversation about the great work that's been done on Chapter 229. And then Mr. Law also did the movie preview of what's going to be great about the Chapter 230 item. I think on the very next slide, we finish up again with an opportunity to have several discussion items, the Chapter 231 personnel assignments. DeMarco did a wonderful job, as always, talking about the special ed focus of that. If all continues to go well, I think we're going to split the 231 baby because it's so big into 2 parts. And I am hoping to also have a 231 discussion that is, I think, less excitable but important about adding some additional SBOE approved courses into the rules. And then we are thinking about making a little twist in how we handle the CTE portion of those assignments, but more to come there. Mr. Law, again, you'll hear his melodic pipes as he talks about some proposed changes for Chapter 234, all things military. And then again, always great to hear my colleagues talk about Chapter 235, the revised teacher pedagogy standards. There's a Chapter 239 school counselor certificate item that is discussion only. Some of you may remember I had quality time at the podium, I'll frame it that way, at the April SBOE meeting about changes related to Senate Bill 798. There was a request from SBOE and our board to bring back just those rules and just have a conversation about the things that are currently in place to ensure that we have strong preparation for school counselors. And then Sarah Wolf gave a great teaser that makes you want more about the conversation about Chapter 249. In my excitability, I see that I am clearly in denial. There will also be a Chapter 228 discussion item. I don't know why yours truly is blocking that, but there will be also a Chapter 228 discussion item. So I think that is it for that slide. And on the next one, now you've been kind enough to listen to all of us talking. We want to open it up and see if any of you have any additional questions that we could help with.
I fucked up. The time was 10 o'clock, not 11.
Trisha, say what you said again. I missed it.
I'm so sorry. I thought I was on mute. I apologize.
No, it's okay. Okay, well, if everyone else is going to be gracious to us, like we've been well-behaved people and everyone else on the team except I have in that category, I think the next slide just hinted at again, I'm going to be sending you a second survey for the EPSG member feedback. Would appreciate your responses to that. And I think unless I'm going to say it for the first time because it just sounds so good, unless Associate Commissioner Jessica McLaughlin has any closing comments, I think that you folks have allowed us to have yet another very efficient meeting, and we appreciate all the engagement and the feedback today.
Oh, thank you, everyone. We look forward to chatting with y'all across a number of spaces in the coming weeks. And certainly as our agenda gets finalized, we'll continue to communicate out with everyone, but appreciate your input and feedback. And thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.